So I just went through the campaign to get reelected, and it was after the Butler shooting. I'd asked people, I said, at all my events, I say, raise your hand if you think the acting director of the Secret Service is going to tell us what happened. Not one person. I said, what about Secretary Mayorkas? You know, he's running HHS. What do you think? Or Homeland Security. What do you think? I said, how about Christopher Wray? You know, head of the FBI? Not one person. Can you just talk about the importance of transparency and accountability in government and how you're going to bring that to the table?
Yeah, Senator Scott, thank you for that question, because that's what I have found across the country as well, and I know it's certainly true in my home state of South Dakota, is that people don't trust the federal government. They don't trust our leadership and this current administration that's in the White House right now to tell them the truth. To tell them the truth about what the threats really are, about our agencies and departments, when there are failures, addressing them and fixing it. The Secret Service is one of those perfect examples. They need leadership that understands why that Secret Service was created and what it needs to do. There's two elements really that the Secret Service is tasked with, and that is protective detail and then also investigations. Yet we see investigators within the Secret Service out there investigating antiquities and other things that are off mission when they should be focused on making sure we're addressing national security events with the protocols that are necessary and protecting the individuals that they're charged with and getting that skill set and training that are necessary. That's been compromised by not having enough people there and being adequately staffed and resourced. But frankly, the leadership hasn't been honest about talking about it. We saw this with the drones over New Jersey as well, the federal government not answering the questions from the public. And when they finally got a straight answer out of President Trump, they felt reassured that somebody recognized that this was something they were questioning and that they deserved answers. My goal and my mission is to build trust. We will undertake a large job and a large duty that we have to fulfill, that the American people expect us to do, by securing our border, to make sure that our nation is a nation with borders, or we're no nation at all, and that we are making sure that those criminal actors that are perpetuating violence in our communities and in our cities and towns and states are removed from this country, that there's consequences for breaking the law in our country again. There has to be consequences, because when Americans break the law, there's consequences. And why would we ever allow someone to come in from another country and not allow them, and not have consequences, or allow them to continue to go forward and to commit rape and murders and break other laws that endanger our society? So we've had over 13,000 murders that are loose in this country that have come over that border. We've had almost 16,000 rapists and sexual assault perpetuators that are loose in this country right now. 425,000 plus people have criminal convictions that are here illegally in this country that our current administration is doing nothing to round them up and get them out of our country. We will be doing that immediately, and that will be the priority. And that is one of the reasons that today the American people have lost their trust. President Trump will build it back and know that their federal government is accountable to them and is working to put America first again.
So Joe Biden completely opened our southern border and dismantled our entire immigration system. As a former governor, I know that when the federal government policies are broken and failing Americans, you see the impacts in your state, just like I did when I was a governor. And you take the steps necessary to protect the families in your state. I know you've done that. One thing you did, as you talked about before, you sent troops, our National Guard, to the southern border. Can you talk more about how Biden's open border policy has affected your state and communities, and the role your state resources placed in helping secure the border?
You know, we certainly have seen the effects in South Dakota that many of your states did, and I would say every state has seen the effects of an open border and the policies that have been under the Biden administration. We saw increased crime, but we also saw increased drug activity. We saw cartel and their affiliates moving into our state to proliferate trafficking, and we saw people being victimized and a lack of accountability with the federal government. So when Texas was addressing the situation and asked other governors for help, we sent help. I know many of the other governors at the time were sending law enforcement, but I made the decision that at that time that it was more appropriate to send the National Guard, that our National Guard could be activated under Title 32 and sent to assist another state from the invasion that was happening, and because the National Guard is trained for just such a mission. Because of this invasion, that it is a war zone down there with what they are going to see, the threats that they would see, and that they are trained specifically to interact with other agencies. The National Guard is used to falling in with other agencies and cooperating with them and could do that seamlessly. And their families and their communities are normalized to them being deployed. So we have in South Dakota deployed our National Guard to the southern border 8 different times. 2 of them were federal deployments that the Biden administration sent them down there. One was to send our Lakota helicopters, which were used for surveillance and the drug interdiction that was going on down there. But 6 other times I sent them under state activation to partner with Texas and other states in securing our southern border. They did security operations. They also did building of the wall and partnered with Texas, recognizing the failures of the federal government. The failures of the federal government are significant, and we've seen our families and communities devastated by those effects, by the drug epidemic, by the trafficking that's going on, the increased crime. And we recognize that just because the federal government wasn't doing their job, we could not fail our state. And I needed to protect the people of South Dakota, and the people of South Dakota were overwhelmingly supportive of these deployments and very proud of our National Guard.
When I was governor of Florida, there was a terrorist attack in Paris by Syrian refugees. So President Obama was president, and I said, I'd like to know if you're going to send refugees to my state, that you give us some background on them. You know, I assume you vetted them and tell us what's going on. You have to tell me, but you ought to tell our state law enforcement and our local law enforcement. All right, that they said, go jump in the lake. They're meaner than that, but they said, go, you know, you have no rights as a governor, which had made no sense. We had over 70,000 people come here after Afghanistan on planes into this country, completely unvetted, all right? They've never given our governors any information. So would you change that?
Yes, the communication between states and the federal government has been absolutely broken. And that's what I love about this committee is you do have governors sitting on this committee that have been in that role as a commander-in-chief and have the responsibility for being the CEOs of their state. It's a different perspective than serving. I served in Congress too, and both are extremely important, and they're just different in that responsibility that weighs on your shoulder. I often told folks that that is the thing that most times, if something was going to keep me up at night, it was the responsibility that I had being commander-in-chief, recognizing the decisions that I made. And I'm sure you had this feeling as well, Senator Scott, as governor, that impacted those families, those soldiers, and it impacted their communities when we pulled them out, and the importance of that. And when they were bringing refugees into the country, I as well communicated that to the federal government. They were bringing refugees, and I asked how they were vetted, how we were working with their home countries to find out who they really were, what their intentions were, and why they were coming to the United States, and received no information from this administration, that vetting process was being done, that we knew where they're going. In fact, they kept us in the dark and didn't communicate to us even what states and where those refugees were being placed. So that is something that we need to change. When we have programs that fall under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security, there needs to be communication, especially with the governors, so that we can coordinate to ensure that it's the right thing for that state.
Thank you.